Okay, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Just want to point out that AI has been used but not harmed in preparing this presentation, but it means that there could be some weird spelling mistakes. In addition, before we start, we're going to take 1 minute of silence in respect of the victims, not all of which have been identified and buried, and we have kidnapped and so on. So today we're going to talk about negotiation. And as patent attorneys, we feel that we've done our job when we get a wonderful patent granted. But the real negotiation in patents starts when that's over. So let's first ask a question. What's more common? Is that you negotiate with an examiner, or is that you negotiate with a competition? So it turns out in the US, about 10% first office action allowance, meaning in 10% of the applications filed, you get the patent without any negotiation. On the other hand, fewer than 5% of the disputes, patent disputes, actually make it all the way to judgment. What that means is that for any given patent which will go all the way, you maybe are more likely to do negotiation with the other side. Now, it is true that the ratio between granted patents and court cases is below 2%. But that's because there's a lot of negotiation happening before you get to court. And numbers, of course, are hidden. So the questions that I put to you, is a patent just an asset that you negotiate over, like a donkey or a house? Or is it a tool which can help drive the negotiation to be, well, maybe faster is not always good, but in the right direction? One thing we do know is that there will be negotiation and patents will be a factor. And what I want to talk about today a bit is how drafting and prosecution could affect these guaranteed future negotiations. So I talked to ChatGPT and I asked him, what do you think about patents and negotiation? And it said, oh, patents give you a legal framework and enhance your position. I asked it a few more questions, and it said, specifically, which part of a patent can help you negotiate? So it said, a clear abstract and summary can help others quickly understand the patent's essence, which can be advantageous during initial negotiation stages when potential partners or licensees are assessing the patent's value. Okay, so I agree with that, and it also shows you that you have to keep on nudging ChatGPT in order to get a good answer. So what is negotiation? There are a lot of different views. Some people think negotiation means I'm going to show you that I'm strong and you got to do what I say. Some say I'm going to trick you. Some say negotiation is some sort of exploration, what different people need. Some people say negotiation is, you know, I want this, you want that. It's a zero-sum game. Some people say negotiation is I know what you want and I'm going to decide how to get what I want. And some people go so far as saying that any type of communication and interaction is a type of negotiation. So there's a lot of different opinions out there. And I asked ChatGPT, it's great for summarizing nonsense, to summarize for me the three main schools of negotiation. The first one is competitive negotiation, and I asked ChatGPT to tell me for each school some important principles that they hold. So, zero-sum perspective, either I win or you win. Maximizing self-interest, I got to do what's good for me and ignore you. And information is power. Another negotiation school is, let's call it collaborative negotiation. The idea is to make win-win. We want to get the pie bigger. We want to build relationships. We want to solve problems. Okay. There have been books written on negotiation. A famous book by the Harvard Negotiation Project is called Getting to Yes. And I'm going to start talking about patterns now. The first principles they talk about is separating people. They have many principles, I cherry picked the ones I'm going to talk about. Separate people from the problem. Okay, instead of fighting with people, fight about abstract things. Patents are objective technical documents. It's not he said, she said. We have a patent. We know what we're negotiating about. Focus on interests, not positions. Patents, if written correctly, can lay out interests, your interest and interest for the other side. Generating options for mutual gain. I apologize, there's some explosions in the background. Generating options for mutual gain. Patents do a very good job of describing options which can be mutual gain. And of course, the patent is written before you do the negotiation, so the other side can read the document and not suspect that you're doing it as part of some negotiation trick. So that's one school of negotiation, getting to yes. Another one is called start with no. That's Jim Kemp. And what he says basically is if you start by saying yes to somebody else's offer, that's it, discussion's over. You asked, I said yes, we're done. So you have to start with saying no. And when you start with saying no, then you can actually talk about what people want. Patents, by their nature, are no. If I have a patent, I'm telling you, you can't do this. He says it's important to make the other side comfortable and secure. Patents might make you feel uncomfortable, but they're relatively reliable. And compared to other types of legal cases, it's easier to understand what might happen and what you will be allowed to do and what you won't be allowed to do. Having less uncertainty calms people down. Just reminding you, sometimes you want more uncertainty in order to force them to come to you to negotiate. He says, whenever you negotiate, you should have a guiding mission and purpose. Also, when you write a patent, it says when you negotiate, talk to the people who can actually make a decision. When you write a patent, you want to make sure that if the person who can make a decision sees your patent, they understand it. Okay, if you want them to understand that they have a problem, it better be that when they look at the patent, they understand they have a problem. If you want them to understand that they should cooperate with you, it better be that business guy, not patent attorney guy, and not engineer, can understand that. And he says you always have to budget time, money, energy, and emotion. Patents definitely set a timeline, costs, and also energy. One more school, Chris Voss, never splits the difference. He also has some principles. One is, don't feel their pain, label it. Okay, when you're talking to, when he's expert in hostage takers, you don't feel what the other people are saying, you have to give it a name. What that means is when you write a patent and the patent is meant to solve a pain that somebody has, you should name it. You shouldn't pussyfoot around. You shouldn't say, oh, it would be nice if these things would maybe cost a little bit less. You should actually say, one of the problems with existing solutions is that they cost 4 times as much as the upkeep for 10 years. Okay? That's your pain. It's just too expensive. Another principle he has is triggering the magic words, that's right. Not I agree with you, which is usually just waving you off. That's right. Somebody should be reading your patent and nodding their head. They read your background and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. They read the problems you talk about and they nod their head, yeah, yeah, that's right. They read the possible solutions that you bring up or the benefits, and again, shake their head. Nod their head. Bending the reality. I've mentioned before this client we had who spent a whole year designing around a patent which solved a problem which didn't need to be solved. That's because they thought there was a problem, and when they read the patent, they were convinced that there's a problem and you have to solve it. Okay, so if you write your patents correctly, your competition will be reading the patents. You can definitely bend the reality, and then they come softened up to the negotiation table. One last principle that I chose from Chris Voss. He calls something a black swan, and when he says black swan, he's talking about secret information, which if you have it, it will completely change the negotiation. Here's a point where I remind you that trade secrets don't have to be technical or marketing. They can simply be, what is your misunderstanding? What is your weakness? What do you care about? These are very important trade secrets, and if your competition will have them when they're doing negotiation, it's over. Now, what do you do with these black swans? You apply leverage. And he talks about 3 types of leverage. One is positive, one is negative, and one is, I'll call it normative. Positive and negative are clear. You'll make more money, you'll feel more pain. Normative means I know what rules you work by, and I will force you to follow your rules in a way that is good for me. With patents, we can think about momentum. The competitor has a momentum, a technological momentum, a corporate momentum, and the patents force him to continue with his momentum in a way which is good for us. So how do we use patents for negotiation? So I divided up into 3 types. One of them has to do with facts, I called it facting, and reliable communication. So a patent can be used to state a case, and like I said, it's doing it objectively, in writing, long before you actually started arguing with the other side. It can present an objective position, usually multiple objective position. It shows the needs that you have, and that can sometimes help cause a negotiation to happen. It exposes a possible future. Okay, a lot of negotiation, especially win-win about making the pie bigger, requires both sides to believe that the pie could be bigger. When you just say it, they don't believe you. But if you already have a technical document which explains how the future could look and the future would be better, that's good. And last, it's an unambiguous document. Or not. But it can seem that way. You can also use patents for process control. In game theory, there's different concepts. One of them is making a threat that is backed up. One of them is making a promise. Obviously, patents are documents which can show threats or make promises. It's a pre-contact feeler. Okay, if you remember what ChatGPT said a few slides ago, somebody sees your patent and gets interested. Okay, so write your patent in a way that before they talk to you, they can see your patent and say, maybe I want to talk to them. And the patent itself, by describing possible futures and steps along the way and problems and solutions, can act as a framework for the goals of the negotiation, or how the negotiation might go, or what do we want the future to look like. So instead of people saying, okay, maybe we want to talk about something, they can say, we want to do what you have in figure 9B of your patent. Can we do that together? We understand that in order to do that, we first have to find a way to do something in figure 6. Okay, I know it sounds esoteric, but if you wrote your patent correctly, it can be done. And last, patents can be used for manipulation. You present a narrative. Narratives have weighted facts, and in particular, you discount some problems, you emphasize other problems, you discount the position of other people. You say, oh, that can't work, that is no good. Patents have some sort of halo that they should be believed and trusted. Patents can definitely expose risk and uncertainty, and here I'm talking about risk and uncertainty of the other side. Okay, other side thinks everything's good, no problem, we just have to connect a few screws and we're good to go. They read your patent, suddenly they realize there's risks, there's uncertainties, there's problems. Maybe we should talk to the patent owner. A patent can be used to present a stake and say, listen, we have this patent, we can't move away from it. And that's related to the whole idea of an anchor. Okay, when you go into a store and they tell you it's $100, which is 20% off our usual low price of $120. First, they're trying to tell you 120 is a low price. Second, that they have usually low prices, and that 100 is a great price because it's 20% off. If you go on the internet, what do you see? You can buy it for $40. What happened? They were using an anchoring attack against you. Patents can do exactly the same thing. Like I said, they are semi-objective technological documents. So, talking about future negotiations, so what can we know about them? Well, when is it going to happen? Sometimes happen is around the corner, sometimes it's 5-10 years. Who's going to be on the other side? What are their interests? What issues will be negotiated? We're just going to talk about money, or is there actually going to be technological cooperation? Do you have any idea what positions you might be presenting during the negotiations? Do you know what actions you plan on taking? Do you plan on threatening to sue them? Do you plan on telling them we have a way to design around your patent? All of these questions affect what you write. So if we're going to write a patent, here's a few pointers. In the specification, you should have examples for what you'll talk about. You should have focuses that match your position. You can have text that decision makers, can understand. You should talk about win-win future scenarios if that's your kind of thing. Figures should show things the other side can understand. And I don't mean the invention, I mean what they're going to be negotiating about. Depending what your negotiation looks like, your claims, maybe it wants to generate credibility, maybe fear, and maybe excitement. How broad should the claims be? Sometimes you want them to be the right amount, and sometimes you want them to be so broad that you generate FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And usually you want the language of the claims to be understood so they'll know what you're trying to do. Part of the patent is a file wrapper. You're negotiating with a patent office, and as you're negotiating with a patent office, you're generating loopholes. So you want to avoid that. In addition, sometimes people read your patent and they say, they never should have gotten that patent. They don't deserve the patent. We shouldn't worry about it. We'll cancel the patent. So you can make sure that your file wrapper has proof in it that the examiner considered what he needs to consider and he still believes you deserve a patent, which will make the other side understand that this patent is real and not something made up. And of course, you should make sure you have some complements. Trade secrets, for example, especially if you can hint in the patent, but even if not, patents don't go alone. Standards. Is your patent on a standard? Does your patent match marketing activities? I'll end with two questions. The first question is, should a patent prevent negotiation from ever happening? And often the answer is no, because if you don't talk to your competitors, you can't learn from them, and then you can't get one of these wonderful win-win. And the second question, what is more believable when you go into negotiation? A broad patent or a narrow patent? So broad might be scary, but not trusted. A narrow patent might indicate that it's really difficult to get IP. So probably you shouldn't be worried about it. Last but not least, here's an example. Your client invents a low-friction fluid valve, and they plan to license the valve to manufacturers, but also to large chemical companies that are probably going to use it directly. And you already know that in some country X, which will not be named, you expect some of the manufacturers to ignore the patent. Okay, so it's an open question. How does this information affect what it is you're going to do? Okay.